We just finished a meeting. We had an hour-and-a-half meeting in the city, in the Eagle Room, to talk about the uptick of violence in the city of Boston, but also to talk about violence overall in the city of Boston. The room was comprised of clergy, community activists, organizations like Madison Park, organizations like the Kroc Center, the MAMLIO, the NAACP. We had a lot of different leaders from different areas that talked about what we're doing as a city. We explained the programs that we have in place today with some of the trauma counseling that we have through the Public Health Commission. We talked about how we've changed the hours of operation through our Boston Center for Youth and Families to be open later at night, about encouraging young people to get there. Some of the conversations were, is there a possibility for us to be able to place a police car at some of the BCWF centers at night so families feel safe about sending their kids there. We talked about focusing on those 12 to 14-year-old young people who aren't some of them are too old for summer camp and some are too young for work. So we're working through a program at BCWF that we have that actually pays them a stipend to work in the summertime. We're focusing on kids that don't have employment and making sure that we get jobs for them this summer. We talked about that. We talked about, really, the conversation really was about how can we solve some of the issues and how can we resolve some of the issues without policing. Meaning, that how can we do it with just not depending just solely on the police department? And I think we had a very good dialogue here. I'm going to ask the commissioner to come up and say it for a few words, and anyone else who's behind me, I'm going to see if they want to come and talk at the microphone, and then we'll take a few questions. Commissioner?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank the mayor for pulling this group together. A lot of the people in this room are very familiar with us. They work with us every day in trying to bring some calm to the city. Obviously, we've had a recent uptick over the last 2 weeks. I think, we had geared up for July 4th, which was always a very troubling time for us. And obviously, it got a little worse than we have, but we had a lot of extra officers out there. But obviously, that didn't do the trick. So we're working here together to see what we weren't doing and where we can improve. And we had a great discussion. We're going to take a lot of things away from this, and hopefully things will settle down. At the end, obviously, we all prayed for the next 6 or 7 weeks and the rest of the year that we don't lose a young kid to violence in our street. Every one we lose is a precious one, and we don't want to do that. And that's why we're all here. Our hearts and soul are into it, and hopefully working together, we'll make the city a quiet place, an enjoyable place for the rest of the summer. So,
I think one of the main themes was we were talking about the importance of collaboration. Rufus J. Falk, Program Director from the Boston 10-Point Coalition. And again, one of the main themes was the importance of collaboration. Also, the realization that this isn't a one weekend phenomenon. This is experiences that folks from Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan have been dealing with for the last 35 years. And it's important that we become innovative and leave the egos behind to sustainably address these issues that are impacting our community. Like the Commissioner just said, one loss of life is too many. And unfortunately, for far too many of our neighborhoods, they've been experiencing losses of lives for 35 years straight. So it's important for us to come together and really put our boots to the ground, leave our egos to the side, and ensure that we're bringing some innovation and accountability to this process. So again, I applaud the mayor for this, but also I applaud everyone who decided to stand with us, because as a group, that's the only way we're going to be able to effectively address this and end this cycle of violence that has been crippling our community.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Ellison. I'm the president of Minority Police Officers Association. Today isn't about any differences that we have. I think today is working collectively and how we can quell the violence in the city. And my organization looks forward in standing together with the city and helping all of our residents to make sure that we not only have a safe summer, but all year that people are safe and be able to walk around the city of Boston. So, Mayor, I want to thank you for convening this meeting and all those attended, because there were some very good ideas that came out of it. Thank you.
Anybody else want to jump in?
I believe we're trying to do what is best for our children in the city of Boston. And we are here to say that we can do together if we put our strength and our energies to save lives. And I appreciate Mayor to put this together and all the law enforcement. But again, it's a community. I mean, I'm going to call the parents, especially my own people down in Dorchester. The families need to come out and help us calling us and open the doors so we can be able to do the work and make their children safe and make our lives better. Thank you. Hi, my name is Bishop Texer from the Diocese of St. Francis of Assisi, Catholic Church of the Americas.
Afternoon, everyone. Chief Gross. It was a great meeting. Here are the takeaways that I liked the most. Accountability, and we're going to be working collaboratively. What does that mean? That means instead of just summer months, we're going to work on problems in our neighborhood that affect our quality of life 365 days of the year. All the power that we have in this room, all of this experience and wisdom, I believe that if we work 365 days of the year, that next summer, hopefully we'll have a quieter and more peaceful summer, because the quality of life would have been increased in the city of Boston, and we would have provided for those families in need whose family members go out and seek their family in gangs and drug dealing and human trafficking. Only us standing together, Mayor, great job, Commissioner, all of our community leaders, all of us together in the village, under the village concept, is the only way that we can bring some peace. So again, the main piece is accountability and to agree to work together. Thank you.
Let me just a couple other takeaways from the meeting. Number one is, obviously there were people that weren't in the room, and we're going to be getting information out to people, out to different neighborhoods about how do we share this information throughout all the entire district. So it's going to have to grow and be collaborative. Two is we're also working on creating a comprehensive plan, if you will. We have one on public safety. Our Office of Public Safety has one. Works with the police department. I've sent a few to families. We've also asked for input from different organizations to take this document and to make some changes. So we've asked them to get that information back to us by Wednesday. So we're going to be working on that. And also, next Monday, our street workers are going to be working with the 5 district captains where the biggest activities increased. And they're going to be talking about getting more information and sharing information and getting our street workers into certain areas. And the same for our trauma counselors, where we've seen these shootings happen. How do we get the trauma counselors into these areas, working with families that might be affected, and also kids that are affected? Because what's happening is some of these are repercussion shootings, and we want to make sure that we try to end that. The last thing I'll say, then I'm going to open up for questions. We also talked about, one of our street workers spoke about, I don't see him here, talked about getting into DYS facilities and talking to young people about guns and violence in the facility, so when they come out, we're putting them on a pathway to success. And what's happened is one young man was killed. He was out probably about, I don't know, he's out a couple of days and got killed out of a DYF facility. So we need to do better work with educating our kids when we have them inside in that type of role. So with that, I'll open up for questions. If you have questions for anyone, anybody else who wants to speak, please jump in to the microphone. I want to thank all the clergy. Any questions? Yeah.
You were talking about things like more officers on the streets, summer job programs, stuff that's already in existence. What new strategies are you going to pursue?
No, it's not new strategies. It's about targeting kids that didn't sign up for summer jobs. It's about targeting young people that are hanging around. It's about targeting. Last night we had an incident with a 14-year-old. If that 14-year-old had an opportunity to work in a BCOF center, it's an opportunity to go out and have our street workers actually recruit kids off the street and get them into the centers playing sports, playing basketball, swimming, whatever's in there. Those are strategies. Be more aggressive on the streets as far as trying to get our young people tied up in a busy situation. Short term. Long term strategy, one of the talks that came out of this was helping parents parent. And how do we, Commissioner Evans told a story of a parent would called the police department saying that, my son won't go to school. How do I help that? How do I get my son to go to school? So we're going to have longer term strategies as far as helping parents deal with if their child has a gun. How do you deal with that situation? That's what we're talking about long term.
So you don't think you need to change the current strategy of just like summer jobs? You think you just need to double down on them?
Oh, absolutely double down. I mean, it's about getting more kids engaged, more kids busy, more kids in a gym, more kids in a pool, more kids in activity, positive activity. That's what it is.
Yeah, the comment was that this wasn't a summertime thing. This is a 35-year thing. We're talking about 3 specific neighborhoods. We're not talking about South Boston, the new waterfront. What does that tell you about the core issues that maybe aren't working or you need to do more?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the main points in here today was, actually Rufus brought it up, if he's still here. He talked about we can't just have these press conferences and conversations in July. You know, this is the third July now that we've had the same conversation around the same week, talking about uptick in violence, and we're making changes. And he spoke about we got to do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And part of that dialogue came out of that was the parenting, was helping parents, was helping bringing the Boston Public Schools to the table. Is there an opportunity? Right now we have a program called Fifth Quarter. The Globe did an editorial on it last week, and the Herald did a story on it. Is there a way for us to take that program now? We have 10,000 young people that are Boston Public School students and incorporate them and teach them about violence and guns and the effects of it. So there's opportunities for us immediately to work on that stuff. And part of that conversation was actually going around the clock, not just dealing with it. I mean, if you look at the map today in the Herald, you know, Southly has 2 shootings, but I think 2 shootings last year, 3 shootings this year. But that doesn't mean there's no violence there. There's violence in some of the housing developments, so we have to do more work on. Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, obviously you see the numbers bigger there, but there's still other violence that we have to work on. It's not just simply a shooting. It's not just eliminating the shooting. It's eliminating the violence and the threats in those neighborhoods.
Mr. Mayor, I realize you just finished the budget, and obviously before this meeting, but are there ways that the most recent budget that you and the council passed reflects a new or just any sort of change in the larger strategy of dealing with Boston kids?
There's 2 things. One is the trauma that's incorporated in this budget, changing the way we did trauma into the 5 centers. We extended it. The second piece of that is changing the hours of our BCYF centers. That actually technically changes in this budget, moving people around. I mean, we had done it before, but it's in this budget, and increasing the number of summer jobs to shortfall. The increase in the increase in the minimum wage. Obviously, for our summer jobs, we didn't cut jobs, we added jobs. And then also any shortfall from the state. And then the other thing is the BEST team. We increased it for four counselors for mental health services to our police department. So this budget has a lot in it to deal with some issues indirectly.
Superintendent mentioned accountability. How are people going to be held accountable, departments, people on the ground?
We're going to figure that out. What we talked about today about keeping metrics and data and information, that was Tanisha Sullivan from the NAACP that brought that up, making sure that as we change systems that we have that accountability there. So we're going to be working on that accountability.
What will determine when someone is not meeting the standards?
I mean, let's figure it out first. I mean, we finished the meeting a half hour ago. We didn't get into the next step. We need a little time to work up a program here, and when we do that, we will figure it out.
There was a conversation about keeping kids occupied, keeping them busy. That's going to have a good correlation effect. One thing that you had brought up this morning was about how we're going to attack guns on the street.
Yeah.
And there was a rollback of background checks and things
There
like
was
that.
There was a reversal of an executive order that President Obama did on national background checks. Now it didn't stop the flow of guns into the Commonwealth, but what it did was it gave a gun owner, gave a retailer the ability for 72-hour background check. So we weren't. It seems like we were able to actually check people that shouldn't be buying guns. That's reversed. We had a situation where a congressman was shot in Washington, D.C., and the very first question was to another congressman who was on the field, do you agree with that we should have gun restrictions or reform? And his answer was no. We should have First Amendment freedom. I mean, these guns are coming to our cities, and not just Boston, Chicago, New York, all over Miami. So we're going to continue the efforts to try and reduce the violence. We have a gun buyback program that's in existence today. We still have money in the account. We're still going to buy back guns. We're in the process now of setting up another gun summit with New England states, which we've had 2 now. We're going to have 3. We're going to have a 4th one. We're going to continue those efforts moving forward. Our police still take guns off the street every day and every night. It just seems like every time they take a gun off, another one appears, and we just got to continue to be diligent on that work. Asking parents that if you have a gun in your house and you're worried about it, call 911. We will pick the gun up. No questions asked. We will give you a gift card for that gun. If the gun is involved in a crime in the past, we will come back, obviously. But that program's still in existence.
Is there any state component to this conversation? Like, are you guys working closely with DCF?
Yeah, we're going to be reaching out. That came up as well. We're going to reach out to the state after this. I spoke to the governor last night at 11 o'clock. He offered any support that we needed. I told him I'll let you know after today. So a couple of things we're going to look at is have a better intensive conversation with DCF. And also, we do meet with probation and the courts pretty regularly, our Office of Public Safety, but intensify that. Is there a way for us to have more outreach with these kids? And if we know these known kids, try and target them into programs.
Public safety related issue. There's been a recent number of kids who've fallen out of windows in the city.
Well, it's not just the city. It's been all over the place. Brookline, I think, one in Brookline, a couple in Brookline. I mean, what we're doing in special services, obviously, I put out a warning this morning to folks. I was on the radio, and I said, be very careful. I mean, what we have is old housing stock in the city. You kind of see, you hear these every year. It's amazing to me. And you get these 3, 4, 5-year-olds walking around, and they kind of stand up on the windowsill, and out they go. So we're asking people to be diligent. If you have a concern about your apartment, that your landlord's not responding, call 311, ask for inspectional services, and we'll go out there and check, and we'll hit them with a violation. I mean, I'm not sure whose responsibility it is to put the screen there, but if you're concerned about it, call 311, and we'll get information. We'll get people out there.
Could there be some sort of public awareness campaign?
Yeah, every year we do it. We talk about it. I mean, we talked about it, I think, at the beginning of the summer. So right now I'll do it. If second, third floors, first floors, if you have an apartment and you have little kids, keep them away from the windows. We'll get those bars that protect them from going up. I think in Boston, I'm not sure if it was Boston or Brookline, the 4-year-old that fell out the window and fell in the bushes, thank God. But we've had some fatalities as well. I mean, and it seems like it's senseless violence, senseless deaths that are happening. But what happens? You take your eyes off a 3-year-old for half a second. Next thing they're up, but we got to do more about that.
One last question. Can we ask the commissioner a couple questions?
Yeah. And then I really want you guys to grab everyone behind me when they're walking out. So.
Commissioner, I get, we know that statistically, technically, violent crime is down, and then we have all of this violence all at once around the July 4th holiday. Do we know what attributes to it?
Well, again, we are down. Robberies, aggravated assaults, everything's down. The only thing that's up is the non-fatal shootings and recently the homicides. Now, traditionally, July 4th, New Year's Eve, certain nights of the year, we know that violence is going to go up. So we geared up. I had more officers clearly in the neighborhoods than I had down the Esplanade. I made it clear in a press conference last week, I wasn't worried about the Esplanade. I made it clear what I was worried about. And what I was worried about, unfortunately, came true. But it wasn't from the lack of officers. Last night, we were less than a block away when that individual got shot on Blue Hill Ave. Yesterday morning in Dudley, we had 2 walking beats there. So we put out a tremendous amount of resources. And unfortunately, we're frustrated because we still had what we weren't hoping for. So, that's why we have this meeting today, to try to figure out what are we missing here. Obviously, the increased visibility out there and us being around and about isn't working. I think it's more all of us. It's a community issue. It's a police issue. It's something more that we have to do to make these kids safe, because just pumping more cops out there and putting them everywhere hasn't worked over the last week. We geared up for this. We had more cops in the neighborhoods, but we still had the same outcome that we weren't hurt, that we didn't want to happen.
Commissioner, what is it though? Is it a drug issue, a gang issue? What are we seeing? What's happening?
Well, there's a lot of things. Over the last week, we had a lot of older people that were shot. People in their 30s and 40s that I don't think so much they are gang, but I think clearly what happened on Blue Hill Ave yesterday was a gang issue. The 15-year-old stabbing the other kid and killing him, I think, is a gang issue. So it's a mixture. There might be some drugs. There might be some old feuds of kids getting out of jail. Like the mayor said, the poor kid who got killed, I think last night, was out of DYS less than 24 hours. So you got to look at old feuds that are all coming to. But let's be clear. We're down 6% crime. We have these spurts of crime. The night that poor doctors were killed, we had 4 homicides that night. We had 4 the last, we'll get on top of it, but it's not just going to be the police. It's everybody here working together so these young kids aren't shot on our streets. Because like the mayor always says, we all say, one kid killed or shot on the street is one too many. And that's why we're here.
This is the last question. Yeah. Is the age range a concern? I mean, we're talking about targeting.
Well, I've said it and I'll say it again. The age is a concern, but what's more concerning to me is the firepower out there. The kids used to have 6 shooters. Now they have these high-powered guns that when they go and they're going to shoot, they're shooting 18, 20. One incident a week ago, there was 50 rounds fired. So, it's very easy to hit people, and that's why you're seeing a lot of these are non-fatal, because they're just spraying. And these people getting shot, legs, whatnot. But what concerns me is they're just shooting randomly, and that's why we had an 8-year-old shot. So we need to get to these kids, but more importantly, we got to get these guns that aren't the guns of old. These are high-powered guns that these kids have.